Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, the person that publishes this report. Before I bring her on, I want you to just read this. She said this is just volume one of her report. This is such a big, important subject. She says there's no real important money subject, subject more important than this. And she's got this is usually like a magazine, but this is like a book, like a textbook now. This is the real game of missing money. It is part one. And if you think the missing $21 trillion out of DOD and out of the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, it doesn't affect you, you're wrong. And she just lays it out on the magazine cover here. And I want to just spend just a minute here on the magazine cover, and we're going to start over here with the missing money. And it says, hey, we're going to start here, and we work hard, we pay our taxes, obey the law, and we save for retirement. And of course, we put money in the retirement, and we have in IRAs and into 401ks, and here we put money into Social Security, and then we put money into our church and schools, and the money is then used to buy treasuries, U.S. treasuries. Then we have this secret budget. And that's what the U.S. budget has turned into. And then, the banks, and then it goes to the stocks and to fake news that covers it all up. And then the bailouts and buybacks for big bonuses. And then the global surveillance, industrial prison, secret space program. And our payday is a big IOU. And to explain this, and that's just simply, your money is being grafted off in all kinds of ways that you're not going to find out about. And it's important for you to know about it, because everything in your future is going to play off what is going on with the federal budget and the secret money. Catherine Austin Fitts, the publisher of the Solari report. Catherine Austin Fitts, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Hey, Greg, it's great to be here. It's good to be with you.
I looked at your little game of secret money here, and I'll just hold up again, and just how simple it is that you broke it down to: you spend money, you do all this, you save for retirement, and then you get an IOU. That's really what's going on. Explain the IOU.
Well, the challenge is you have a tremendous amount of capital in the United States, whether it's flowing into the insurance companies, the banks, through our retirement savings. It's going into Treasury and Treasury-related securities, or securities that are supported by the U.S. federal credit. And the reality, as the financial management has gotten further and further away from the laws, and now this new accounting policy that was created last year called FASB 56, we've now seen those books go entirely dark. And corporate stocks making money from the federal government can have waivers that allow them to ignore SEC rules. And the net result of all of this, as we explain in the book, is the entire accounting and financial reporting has gone dark, which means we're putting the money in and we're getting back a treasury security, which is an IOU from ourselves in essence, but the assets increasingly appear to be leaving out the back door. And so the question is the U.S. Treasury now the next version of J.P. Madoff? It's very interesting. The Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, just got sued for being part of a group of investors who are accused of asset stripping Sears before it went down. And my question is, was Mnuchin put in here to do the same thing, finish the asset stripping before they completely re-engineer the U.S. government?
When you say they're going to re-engineer the U.S. government, what does that mean to people who are holding these pensions, who are depending on Social Security, who are depending on Medicaid, Medicare, all the other various sundry massive amounts of social programs that we have here in America?
So our pensions and retirement savings have treasuries, which are essentially an IOU from ourselves, from 325 million residents in America, most of which are, some of which are working to pay the taxes. So it's an IOU from ourselves, but if all the assets we financed have disappeared into private corporations and private contractors and private banks out of the back door, it's a very different credit than if those assets are still in the government.
Meaning there's no there. There's no asset to back up the promises.
Well, here's the question. If the U.S. government has refused for, since 1996, so that's quite a while, if they've refused for 25 years to produce audited financial statements as required by law, And we know from what financial accounts and disclosure they have produced that there appears to be, massive violations of the law and 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments. Then there's nothing to say that all those assets aren't disappearing out of the back door. I mean, we know that Washington at this point is on a merry-go-round of Congress doing things that make the stock market go up. So, Congress does something that causes the stock market to go up, and then the people who make capital gains on that turn around and give campaign contributions to Congress, and round we go. The reality is, if you want to make the stock market to go up, there's nothing better than having above market contracts and transferring assets at below market prices. That's why I always say privatization is not privatization as it's being conducted by Washington. It's privatization. Privatization is when the contract is at above market, as they were on Iraq. We've heard many disclosures of that. And privatization is, when you have 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments and clear indication of money, marching out the back door, or assets.
The crime that pays is the crime that stays, is one of the things that you say. This is a crime that's going to stay. I mean, right now, what do we do? We're defenseless. We're hopeless. They've taken the budgets dark, correct? I mean, you can't find out what happened.
So it's not hopeless, and we're not defensive. I mean, here's the reality. Number one is we're financing this. So my taxes and my purchases of Treasury securities are financing this. And if you look at situations like this, we have the ability to say, no, I'm not going to finance this. I'm going to hold accountable. So if you look at what I, as a citizen or an investor or a global investor, because it's not just in the United States, this impacts global investors. So if you look at the ability of your pension fund trustees or global investors all over the world to start asking questions and say, no, this is not acceptable. Or no, we're going to raise the price. If your credit's going to deteriorate to this extent, we're going to raise the price of what we charge. So people have the ability to hold this accountable. That's number one. Number two, if you look at what state and local officials can do, there's a tremendous amount they in the state and local courts can do, because if you look at the Constitution, ultimately it's the local sheriff and it's the local state and local officials who have the power to do this. Your congressman has the power. Congress holds the power of the purse. Now, if you look at FASB 56, it was approved by both the administration and Congress, bipartisan, on the same week that everybody was screaming about Kavanaugh. It was passed the week that Kavanaugh, we had all the hearings on Mr. Kavanaugh's teenage sex life. So at the same time, everybody supposedly looks like they're fighting. We had a bipartisan Congress and administration pass this very quietly underneath the attention given to the Kavanaugh hearings.
Why did they do that? Why did both parties get together and pass it?
I think both parties got together to pass it because since World War II, we have been building more and more secret financial operations, whether it's the black budget or what some people call the hidden system of finance. And secrecy, Greg, is a huge financial addiction. And I think every member of Congress, does not see a way to kick the can down the road without becoming more and more extreme in tactics. What I called FASB 56 was secret money for secret armies. The same week, literally passed right after that, Blackwater came out with a big ad in one of the mercenary magazines saying Blackwater is coming, meaning, okay, now we're free to change your name. So let's step back and look at what happened with FASB 56. We had Mattis as Secretary of Defense. We had Kelly as Chief of Staff. Both of them were very opposed to using mercenary armies. Both used their considerable gravitas to get enormous increases in appropriations in defense. As soon as those appropriations are done, we pass FASB 56, and the next thing you know, Mattis is out, and then Kelly is out, and Kelly is replaced by the person in the administration who engineered FASB 56. And we clearly have a deal between the Trump group and the Bushies. Bushies, Barr goes into Department of Justice. All this, you're basically seeing the Bushy guys go back in and Justice, and my guess is probably CIA. Anyway, but what that means is we are now free. Every mercenary army in the world is now free to come into Treasury and come into the Congress and say, here's our proposal for something that keeps the U.S. stock market flying. So you've now you've opened a door that allows near infinite amount of financing to foreign intelligence and military and mercenaries behind a secret veil. So I call it secret money for secret armies, and the ability now to re-engineer the federal government, particularly after the election, once the JEDI contract is locked, you're basically moving all of the federal government into a cloud. So we have all the intelligence agencies in a cloud. The JEDI contract will put all of DOD in a cloud. Once you get all that data in a cloud, you're an ability to re-engineer the cash flows in very significant and radical ways.
What do you think that looks like? The re-engineering of America, what does it look like?
I think the first thing it looks like is it looks like basically taking, asset stripping the federal government of the remaining land, real estate, and assets, re-engineering the cash flows, whether it's Social Security or welfare or Medicare and Medicaid, but doing it in a way that it's constantly ratcheting down the commitments to the American people and holding them accountable to produce the money to make good on the IOUs. So I think what you're looking at is a significant debasement of obligations to the American people and a significant debasement of their assets, and and the currency debasement is going to be enormous.
The currency, like inflation, the inflation is going to be enormous. Tell me about that.
Right. So over the last 5 years in the United States, if you look at the household goods, the cost of household goods, they've been running up at about 8 to 14%. So if you're in Silicon Valley, it's 14%. If you live where I live near Memphis, it's 8%. But if you look at what that's doing, it's what I call the slow burn. It's squeezing everyone in America, and it's reached a point where that squeeze is causing major, major dislocations. If you then turn around and start abrogating or cutting pension benefits and, down, then you're talking about really very significant financial harm.
And you think what the re-engineering of the country is going to do is to get away from the social contract, social commitments, socialism, whatever you want to call it, and go totally away to maybe a more feudal system? You have the very, very wealthy and then everybody else.
Well, what you've been doing, I'm going to grossly oversimplify. What you've been doing, Greg, is you've been running a system using the federal credit. So using exactly what we're talking about to make small business pay anywhere from 20 to 30% for their cost of capital, while the big players who are playing in the system have a 0% cost of capital. So the bailout is a perfect example. We were talking earlier about Deutsche Bank. One of the reasons Deutsche Bank is in trouble is Germany never stuck the bailout tab to the taxpayers the way we did here in the United States. That's one of the reasons Deutsche Bank is struggling more than our banks are. So we've been running through the federal credit, a system that significantly disadvantages the productive small player. And that's one of the reasons you saw the real pushback in 2016, and is one of the reasons you're seeing the pushback in the recent European elections. The people who are running productive small business or productive practices, whether you're an architect, an engineer, a doctor, a lawyer, they're being overwhelmed by what's called technocracy, and they are being overwhelmed by, a rigged cost of capital, which is advantaging the large guys tremendously. That's what the source of inequality is. If you look at the U.S. federal credit and how this has been manipulated, that is the primary source of inequality. And part of the challenge here, Greg, we talk about the United States government like it's a sovereign government. It's not a sovereign government. To have sovereignty, you have to control your finances and you have to control your information systems. And one of the biggest dangers, which we will see when they finish doing the JEDI contract, is we're talking about private corporations wanting the information systems, and a variety of private parties and foreign parties have access to those information systems, or are certainly rumored to have access in a way that absolutely compromise the U.S. sovereignty. And that's part of the problem, because if you can access those systems and access that intelligence, it puts you at a tremendous advantage. Let me give you an example.
And that's the Jedi that's the Jedi contract. Explain the Jedi contract.
Watch the Jedi contract, because the competition for the last year and a half of the Jedi contract has been absolutely fierce.
Explain the Jedi contract. Explain it for us so we understand that.
About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the CIA and 17 intelligence agencies all went into the Amazon cloud together. Okay, now what that means is you've got one provider, one corporate provider, who has the data on the largest flow of retail sales in the country, but all the U.S. intelligence agencies, and they're all in the same corporate cloud together.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now the DoD is planning to put out a similar cloud contract. There are two competitors. The two semifinalists are Amazon, which runs the first for all the intelligence agencies, and Microsoft. Amazon was very much in the lead. We had a huge hit and squabble around Bezos, and now Microsoft is in there as a co-finalist. Now, tremendous rumors that Microsoft has a backdoor for a variety of players. Of course, everybody believes the NSA has a backdoor into everything. But there are significant rumors that foreign intelligence agencies also have a backdoor into those clouds.
Oh, my God, the beast. The beast in the Bible. This is the beast.
I call it the data beast. And so let me give you, so I was writing an article called The Data Beast and dealing with it in 1998. I emailed or called every Fed member bank, and I said, what corporate contractors have your systems, are managing your IT systems? Do your members have access to the data? And who are the corporate contractors who have access to the data? And every one of them, to a person, wrote back or said, that is confidential information. We are a private bank. We are not going to make that information available. Now, what I have to tell you, if I have the New York Fed flow of data and I can create fiat currency out of thin air, well, it's only a matter of time till I own everything. It's pretty simple. But we saw, I always talk about the financial coup that started with the bubbling of the mortgage bubble and, sort of the pump and dump of the internet stocks. That financial coup, Greg, was engineered through the information systems. It's very interesting. When Enron broke, I had been looking for the money that was disappearing from HUD. And I'd come to the conclusion that Enron was possibly one of the companies that was being used to launder the money out of HUD. Because if you look at the people, the lead contractors who ran the HUD systems, they were all on the board or lead investors in Enron. So, and it was interesting, the chairman of the finance committee at Enron was a lead investor in the company that was running the systems at the SEC and Department of Justice. And he got up in front of the Congress and said, oh, we had no idea, which was a lie, because it was interesting. He was on the board of Harvard Corporation, and Harvard was shorting Enron at the same time he was saying, we had no idea, so impossible. Anyway, but it was funny because I said, at the time, the Department of Justice has not asserted control of Enron's documents, but the Enron investors have concerted control of the Department of Justice Enforcement Department and SEC Enforcement Department's documents. So, you have very serious sovereignty questions. And I've said for a long time, the U.S. government is not sovereign, because right now you have the banks and the IT contractors running everything. And that's why I believe, as a legal matter, they're liable for the $21 trillion. In other words, they are privately liable for the $21 trillion. If they have been processing illegal transactions through the New York Fed and the New York Fed member banks and those IT contractors, they're liable. And it's one of the reasons I believe the largest contractors spun their operations out in 2015, right after the 2015 year when $6.5 trillion was missing, but before it was published. So from the time when they closed the books to the time then they published the fact that DOD was missing $6.5 trillion and HUD was missing a couple $100 billion, they spun their IT division out to a new company.
for liability reasons.
Solved.
And that's what they admitted. That's what they admitted. The DOD admitted in writing that we can't find 6.5 trillion. They admitted that themselves.
Right. And when Dr. Skidmore, as you know, questioned them, they produced one report that was entirely redacted. He sent me this was after Dr. Skidmore published his report. He sent me the financials. Actually, it wasn't a financial statement. It was a report by the Office of Inspector General. Every number in the report, Greg, was redacted, and part of the title was redacted. And Dr. Skidmore said, I've been dealing with government finances for over 30 years. Dr. Skidmore said, can this happen? And I said, no, I've never seen anything like this. I've never heard of an IG report being redacted. I didn't even know it could, I was like, this can't happen, but I guess it can because it's happened. I couldn't believe it. I was on the floor. I was just, in the world of government reporting, this is so shocking that it's unbelievable. Now, I'm sure the reason they produce FASB 56 is, because let me explain how shocking FASB 56. FASB 56 basically says a small group of people who you don't know can create a process that you don't understand and isn't defined and take whatever they want secret and not tell you.
And FASB is the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board.
Right. So basically what we've just done is with an obscure accounting policy, we've changed the U.S. government governance structure from a republic to something else, which I would describe as, I don't know whether to describe it as a financial coup d'etat or a breakaway civilization or a deep state. Because I don't know who this secret group of people is. I don't understand what the secret process is. I don't understand how much they can take public or why. I don't know where the money's going. I don't know if the assets of the United States still remain on our balance sheet, but have been handed out, to corporate contractors on a privatization on the Just Do It method. This is sort of Nike re-engineers the federal government by just taking everything on the Just Do It method. And here's the problem. If you say, oh, well, you can trust these private people and you can trust these secret people and you can trust the secret process, the reality is there's no audit process to check them. Why should they follow the rules of FASB 56 when they haven't followed the rules of the Constitution, the financial management laws, the financial management regulations, or the financial management administrative procedures for the last 30 years?
No rules.
Right. Exactly. We're in line. That's why I told you. Remember when we did I had a great conversation when I said, we're in Never Never Land. There's no, this is entirely trust me. It's just.
No. So there are really, FASB 56 is a rule that says there are no rules.
Well, but
let me
say something else. If I were to show you a chart of the U.S. stock market since the bailouts, compared to the European stock market, Asian stock markets, global stock markets, the U.S. government the U.S. stock market has significantly outperformed global equity markets. And the number one problem I faced as an investment advisor was I believed that the number one reason the U.S. stock market had outperformed global stock markets was because these federal finances allowed a backdoor subsidization into those corporations.
Wow.
So, and the biggest problem you have as an investment advisor or as an institutional investor or a retail investor, should I put money in a company that's juiced with these backdoor tricks, or should I put money in a company that hasn't performed as well but isn't run up on these backdoor tricks? Because if anything stops these backdoor tricks, all of that stuff, which is levitated by this game, is going to fall. It's very interesting. One of the top investors in the world, one of the smartest investors in the world, I think, is a guy named Jeremy Grantham. And it was really funny because he kept saying it can't keep going up. It can't keep going up. And finally, I think a year ago, he wrote, it's very elegant the way he said it. It's quoted in one of our wrap-ups where he said, I underestimated the ability of the American establishment to deliver monopoly profits to publicly traded corporations.
And I wanted to get into something real quick here about this because we're in a digital world, and you're volume one. This is just volume one, and it's usually a magazine size, but this is like a textbook size. This is how complicated this is, and this is for people who want to drill down. Why put it in a hard copy for your?
So here's what happened. As you know, we organize around quarterly and annual wrap-ups, and I was going to do the annual wrap-up on investment screening, and I made a command decision at the last moment. Is why we're mailing this out late to subscribers. I made a command decision to take all the information about the missing money because we were watching an unprecedented effort. I call it a limited modified hangout. We were watching an unprecedented effort to persuade the American people that the 21 trillion wasn't missing, it wasn't real money. Oh, it's a non-cash item. Don't worry about it. It's all okay. So
through mainstream media,
you were the guy who nailed it. The one of the funniest interviews. If you haven't watched Greg Hunter and Dr. Mark Skidmore's last interview, you absolutely nail them. It's the greatest. It's the greatest taking the fake news to the woodshed, Greg, that I've ever seen. Anyway, but so we're watching this unprecedented effort, and I said, because I deal with a very expensive headwinds, hacking. We're still trying to clean up our website from the hacking we took last year after I put the pension fund report up and connected it to the missing money. So I said it is imperative that I collect up all the money, all the information that is necessary for whether it's institutional investors or retail investors or people who are depending on the national security umbrella of the United States. I need to take all this information, I need to get it in hard copy, and I need to mail it all around the world. And it's imperative that I get this information out in hard copy so it can't be hacked, it can't be destroyed, it's out there. And that's why I decided to do this. And of course, it was so much, it's going to be about, it's going to be about 350 pages, so we broke it into 2 volumes. And volume 1 is sort of the basic everything an institutional investor needs. If you're a trustee of a pension fund, volume 1 is everything you need to read to understand this situation. Not what I say about it, but get all the facts on both the finances and the law, and then you decide what you think of this, because you can't trust the rating agencies, you can't trust the dealers, you can't trust the government. At this point, all of our conflicts of interest are off the chart. One of my favorite quotes from one of my pastors in Washington was, if we can face it, God can fix this. If you want to face this, volume 1 gives you everything you need to do. Sit down, close the door, shut off the TV, sit down and read volume 1, and you'll understand what's going on.
The inflation aspect of this, and this is something that you were talking about this last time, saying, well, this could be highly inflationary. Now you're just saying it's going to be a debasement of the U.S. dollar, the Federal Reserve note.
It is now. If you're living in an area where it's 14% increase in cost of goods every year, and your income isn't rising or it's falling, we're already there. It's not hyperinflation, but it's very significant. And if you look at the controls they've put on globally to control inflation, they're quite significant, Greg. But the U.S. debt went up 6% last year. It's estimated to be up 8% this year. God forbid we should try and start any of the wars we're rattling around the world. It's going to skyrocket, and we're in a spiral upwards on the amount of debt. Pretty soon next year, the Social Security Fund, I'm told, will go negative cash flow. In other words, it's going to stop being a net buyer of treasuries and it's going to be a net seller of treasuries, which means if the foreigners aren't buying and the Social Security isn't buying, it's down to U.S. pension funds and the Fed.
Oh, boy. You've not been a big fan of gold. I mean, you said you've always had enough to bribe the guards at the border, but in the last interview, you were like, I like gold. Is this the reason why you like any asset that will protect you against the debasement of the currency?
So it's exactly what I said the last time. I think you want to be in real things, My biggest concern, Greg, the theme on my next Money and Markets commentary is Farmageddon. And, I love farmland.
Yeah.
Because we've had this discussion.
Yeah.
I'm always saying, don't sell your farmland. So my big concern is if you look at the percentage of plantings that are happening across the country, in the United States, but we see similar problems around the world. My biggest concern is the cost of food. Where's your food coming from? So I've been
talking about this on USA Watchdog about how terrible the planting season is, and
so I really encourage people to look at a very practical. Look at your balance sheet. Where's your food coming from? Where's your shelter coming from? Where's your energy coming from? How do you make sure you have resilient, redundant sources? So my number one concern is sort of health and practical things. After that, you want to invest in real things. So you want to invest, I love precious metals. I just don't think precious metals is a magic bullet. And we're coming into enough of a deflation, and with the trade war with China, a lot of what was pushing or supporting precious metal prices was the Asian buying, and I'm not sure we're going to see that level of Asian buying in the future. So how it performs as an investment class this year, I don't know, but I have tremendous confidence, long run in gold and silver. There's no doubt all the central banks are buying gold. There's a reason.
You would be a buyer with some. I wouldn't say bet the farm. I would never tell anybody to bet the farm, but you would be a holder of a core holder of gold and silver as a core.
Right. My favorite thing, I just got back from Thailand, and it was very interesting. I remember being in China and Asia in 1997, and one of the reasons that Asia was struggling at that time was they were growing fast, a lot of money was coming in, but they didn't have the managerial infrastructure you needed to build great companies, let alone well-governed companies. And so they were importing a lot of people from the West. They were importing people from Singapore. I just got back from Thailand, and one of the things I do as I go around the world is for my investment company, for the screens, I underwrite all the publicly traded companies in that market when I'm there. And it was amazing, Greg, because what you were seeing was so much more depth in the managerial infrastructure of Asia, and so many young people starting great companies doing amazing and great things. So I'm a lover of companies, great operating companies that do something useful and essential, and one of the great things about what I do is I get to travel around the world and see these companies, and they're very inspiring because you and I, one of the things we do when we talk about what we talk about is we sort of focus and look at all the fraud going on in the world. But there's also something not fraudulent happening all around the world. And the United States and Asia, Europe, everywhere are people saying, okay, what are the problems of the world? How do I solve them? So Greg Hunter comes out of CNN and says, what's the problem? Fake news. What's the solution?
Truth.
Real news. So I have to say this. I know you're not offering stock, but if I could buy stock in your company, I would short CNN and buy USA Watchdog.
That's very kind of you.
So the thing I love most are operating companies that do something useful. I love railroads. So, I'm very interested by the explosion in railroad building that's going on around the world. But, so my love is operating companies. And I think anytime you see an operating company that does something real, that has real assets, has honest disclosure, and can generate a good return, that's what I have confidence in. What I don't have confidence in is if you look at the fraud in the U.S. sovereign accounts or in the sovereign accounts all around the world. We have bubbled government debt to juice the economy, and we are growing government debt at a faster rate than the GNP is growing, which means the government debt is being reinvested with a negative return on investment. That's got to change, Craig. We've got to grow our way out of this. New technology indicates we can grow our way out of this. But we can't grow our way out of this without the law, Greg. And that's, the drum I keep beating for 30 years. And it sounds kind of boring, but here's the problem. No investment if there's no law. The only thing that has any value is what you can protect with a gun.
Oh my God. Well, CNN has been They've been tail spinning. I really doubt that they have the ratings they do if you take away the airport scam. You know, that somebody walks by that monitor. Oh, that's eyeballs. That counts as our ratings.
So
they're laying people off and doing terrible.
So CNN is really harming the U.S. brand all around the world. It was so embarrassing to sit in Asia, you know, and I hear the same thing when I'm in Australia. I heard it in New Zealand. I heard it in Hong Kong. I heard it in Thailand. You know, people are saying the U.S. is failing, so we need to make other plans. And the reason they're saying that is they are watching what I call the shriekometer, you know, and the silliness and the childishness of a CNN. Wow. So I complained to you earlier this week. I tweeted it out. I had it up on the website. The president flew to Japan. And what did CNN do? They did an article about it with a video about Air Force One and President Trip. What was the featured image? It was John F. Kennedy and his wife getting off the plane in Dallas the day he was assassinated.
Wow, that's
it was the sickest, most childish thing I've ever seen. And it was interesting. One of my Twitter followers tweeted back and she said they just buried the limbo pole, meaning, you know, the limbo dance is how low can you go? And what she's saying is you can't go lower than this. They're basically threatening the president with assassination.
Or encouraging encouraging assassination. I mean, somebody would have done that to Fox News would have done that, or anybody else, even alternate media would have done that to Barack Obama and Michelle. You'd be shut down. You'd be in jail.
Oh, but here's you know, it makes it look like everybody's fighting. The reality is the Trump administration and a Republican and Democratic members of both houses of Congress got together and took the book secret.
Wow.
Now, Greg, I hate to say this, that is the single greatest increase in the swamp's power in the history of our country. And they all did it together.
What are they afraid of? Why would they all agree? What are they universally afraid of for everybody to go, okay, we'll take the book secret? What do they threat? What's the threat they're seeing?
Here's what I think they're afraid of. If you've listened to my Red Button story, and I really encourage anybody who hasn't heard it, just do a search for my name and Red Button, you can get it. But if you understand the Red Button story, what the American people have made clear is they want their check and they want to be able to pretend we're good. And so what Washington has done for 50 years is they've given them a story of here's your check, don't ask questions, don't worry, you're good. Here's a story. 9/11 was a group of Muslims, right? Or, we had to go to war because of the yellow cake, right? We've made clear politically that we just want our check and we don't want to know. And I think they're afraid of what happens when you can't keep that game going any longer. It's interesting. I was just talking yesterday to a money manager that I work with, and I said to him, how are the hedges doing? Because this is an environment where a lot of equity managers are putting on hedges. You're worried about, the market's correcting, you're worried it goes into a major correction, and then it's going to kill your returns for the year. So you put on hedges, and he said, it's amazing. A lot of managers are not putting on hedges. They think the Fed's going to bail them out. And he said, the thing that scares me is that's going to work until the day the market doesn't care that the Fed's bailing them out, because they're so sure that the credit issues in the fixed income market are so deeply bad. They're just going to ignore the Fed bailing them out. It's not good. It's going to work every day until the day it doesn't work, and then it's not going to work.
That's what John Williams says. He says next time, if they start cutting rates and doing QE, the dollar's going to tank. The markets are going to tank. He says it's not going to work next time. That's what he says.
Well, John,
at shadowstats.com.
That's a military question. And we don't, with FASB 56 and all the secrecy, I don't have the intelligence I need to make a determination as a non-military expert what the military game is. But Mattis explained this when he went through his confirmation hearings. What he did was he said, and he said it very tactfully, I'm going to not say it as well as he did, but he said, we are too dependent on the U.S. military to maintain the global reserve currency. We need to change that. He was right. And I think it was one of the reasons he probably resigned, is he didn't see a way to do that. And FASB 56 was taking us the other way. Let me just mention one of the reasons we have a financial addiction to secrecy. And when you have seen groups in the establishment to get together and talk about, well, can we make less, can we bring disclosure to where a lot of the black budget money is going? One of the reasons they don't want to is they want to maintain a military advantage, because a lot of it's going into weaponry and sort of secret capacity. The other reason they don't is you now have tremendous amounts of corporations who have benefited financially, and their shareholders, from taking technology that the government's financed and moving it out into private hands. And they don't see a way to deal with the legal liabilities, because once the litigation infrastructure and all those law firms get a load of how much wealth has been transferred out of the government and out of taxpayers into these corporations, they're very concerned about the legal liabilities. And if you look at some of the operations, you see massive violation of human rights laws in some of those operations. So they don't see a way to deal with the legal liabilities with transparency. And that's one reason I think it's imperative that independent media make that transparency happen, because we're going to have to, they're taking the money by the just do it method. We're going to have to turn on the lights by the just do it method.
Excellent. Stop right there. This is just volume 1, folks. This is for the premium members. I can't even begin to get through all of the data just in the first half of this. But the cartoon, which is, kind of cute, but when you start reading it, you get down here to the IOU part, and you go, that ain't cute, I'm being robbed.
Right. This is, Greg, I just want to point out, this is $65,000 per person, and that's only what we know. This is 65. So for a family of 4, we're talking about $250,000. Now, one of the things I want to say, the web presentation and the digital material is up there now for everyone, for the digital subscribers, whether that's you can be monthly, semi-annually, or annual. So all the material is available in digital form, and then we're going to be mailing volume 1 in 2 weeks to all the premium subscribers.
So this is going out all over the world to make sure that if the net gets taken down, or you get taken down, or you're attacked, or whatever, it's out there.
Right.
That's how I like that. I like that. This is Catherine Austin Fitts, of course, the Solari report. Of course, I'll put links up to Solari.com. She's the publisher of the Solari report. People don't, it's just for people who don't realize, and most people realize, you were former assistant housing secretary in HUD. When you were talking about HUD, you managed 300 billion, something like that, $300 billion in assets.
Well, Greg, that's how I knew all of this was a lie, because if part of the missing money is at HUD, and all of the excuses are completely bogus.
Yeah.
I know the operations completely. It's bogus.
Yeah. It's sad. I mean, and the best thing we can do is try to get it out there. And just so you know, I have some of my, and I don't want to say who they are, but they're people who are managing money, right? And I tell them about this money, it's real, and they kind of like 21 trillion missing. Well, that's just what we know about. Dr. Mark Skidmore, professor of economics, expert in public budgets, team of people, Catherine Austin Fitts, Solari report. They say this is a real number. Yeah, okay, thanks. I mean, they don't think it's a real number, and it is.
When I litigated with the Department of Justice, so I was producing databases. I was producing a GIS software tool where people could look at the federal budget for their county or their congressional district. And the Department of Justice seized my offices, stole the software. It took me 6 years to get it out from under lock and key. After 6 years, the most valuable pieces were missing. They stole it permanently. Anyway, in that process, I went through, how can all this fraud be happening and me as assistant secretary not know, or me as a Wall Street partner of a major firm? How could this be happening and I not know? And I had to, because of the litigation, and this part of this was, I did all this research because I just wanted to stay alive, and I had to win the litigation. It took me years of going through how could they be stealing all this money out of HUD and me not know? And how could they be doing it without everybody not knowing? How is it done? How is it engineered? How can they do this without, spooking the global financial markets? And so I spent 15 years figuring this all out. So if somebody who is new to this is saying, wait, this doesn't make any sense, I can I empathize. But the reality is that's why you need to get this material, dive in, dig down. A lot of this is available to the public at missingmoney.solari.com. If you are a global investor or you are a retail investor, you need to dive in because this is very real and it's going to have dramatic impact. It's having a dramatic impact on your life. It's having a dramatic impact on your investments. It's having a dramatic impact on your financial situation, your health. It could have a very dramatic impact. If your national security umbrella folds or, if your pension fund is empty, it's going to have a dramatic impact. So you need to pay attention to this because this is very, very, very real.
Catherine Austin-Fitts, the publisher of the Solari report at Solari.com. All the links, the sign-ups, the subscription pages, all that stuff will be on the after the interview section. Catherine Austin-Fitts, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
If people don't know what's going on, let me say it. If people don't know what's going on, it's because they're not watching you.
They're not watching you. You're I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.